Raida.
Thank you so much. So
Marco.
it's my honor to invite on stage Raida and Marco. Wow, you were quick. No. We have got complaints once people didn't sit where their pictures are. So we are very careful on being more accurate on this, that we don't cause troubles on the audiences, that confusing the lovely faces here, right? All right. Who's excited about emerging managers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Woo! Is it working?
Is it working?
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Those who raised their hands, are you all emerging managers?
Yes. Can you reset the timer,
Only
please?
3.
All right. Hey, let's start with little brief introductions. Who are you? A little bit about your organization. What's your role in the organization?
Okay.
Yes, now it's working. Yeah.
I'm Raida. I'm the founder and managing partner of Amcan Ventures. It's a first-time solo GP fund of fund. I back emerging managers in the US. We are based in Delaware, incorporated in Delaware, but I am based in Dubai. The idea is really to bridge LPs that are investing in non-core or not in their home markets to the US. So mostly GCC-based LPs who want to be investing in emerging US managers.
All right, thank you. My name is Marco, and I'm currently general partner at Desal Capital, which is a company inside the Desal Group. We have different companies there. One of them is VC Lab, which is probably the leading accelerator of emerging managers in the world. Right now, we have incorporated around 500 venture capital funds so far, which is a relatively big number. Then there is another company, which is Desal Partners. That's a service provider for these emerging managers, back office, front office, legal service, and so on. And then we have the Desal Capital, which is the investment arm of that company. Before that, I spent quite a few years at a pension fund, and before that, I was a general partner, and before that was a co-founder and founder in several companies. I started this journey around not 68, but 86. 19, not 68, I'm not 80, but 86. So this is my 38th year in business.
Wow. Okay, then let's go very brief. One sentence, what's your description for an emerging manager?
Our definition?
Yes, one sentence.
One sentence. For me, it's a fund 1, fund 2, target fund size 5 to 50 million venture capital. Yeah.
Yeah, we see that 1, 2, 3, which is first fund, second and third fund. What we see is that the nano funds are sub 5 million.
One sentence. All right. But it seems to be emerging managers a super hot thing, and there's a lot of buzz going on in this somewhat slow and maybe a little bit stagnated, more mature VC markets perhaps. So what's causing all this buzz? What's causing the excitement? Is there some facts or figures to support this?
I think if you look at the data, it shows that on average, 7 out of 10 top performing funds are emerging managers, and that's on the broader definition of fund 1 to fund 4. And that's data from 2004.
Okay.
Yeah, we are there as well for returns. We have pretty good data because we are a big accelerator. We don't have to make guesstimates about how these funds are doing. We do have the actual data. I would say that when it comes to the return on fund level, I would say that the best ones so far have been sub 20 million funds in general. So I think that is the return reason for it. Then it's not really dependent on the same cycle as maybe the more mature funds investing in companies that are close, for example, pre-IPO, so that you can get that kind of diversification there as well.
I'd like to add one more thing. When it's smaller fund sizes, which are typically emerging managers, the incentives are more aligned with the incentives of the LPs, just because the management fees from nominal value are very low. So those GPs are really incentivized to perform better because they're going to make more money on their carry rather than on management fees.
So it's like motivation is on the multiple levels, and of course the returns are there. We spoke earlier that every investor's dream.
I would also like to add on that if you think about these managers in the emerging manager space, it's a huge difference if you have a first-time fund, first-time team, first-time manager managing a micro or nano fund as a solo GP for 5 million, or if you're actually a team of experienced managers which have been spin-offs from established companies managing their third fund, which could be up to 500 million, and still in that emerging manager space. So when you talk about emerging managers, you have to be careful because there are a lot of fund of funds and other investors actually telling that they're investing in emerging managers. But if you think about the typical funds there, they could be like number twos or number threes, relatively big ones. And then on the other hand, there could be smaller fund of funds investing in smaller funds or even nano funds where these managers could be first-time managers. So there is a lot of different types of managers in that space as well.
But Marco, would you, sorry, I'm just asking a
Please.
question. Would you define as a spin-off manager that's raising a 300 or 500 million fund one or fund two as an emerging manager?
Well, technically we have to do that, but we are not investing in those funds because they're too big.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, about let's look at from the allocation perspective. Of course, what kind of role these new managers play in when they are constructing, sophisticated portfolio of investing, right? So, and is it like a just subclass of the venture capital asset class, or how should the allocator think about emerging managers in the bigger portfolio perspective?
The way I think, or we think about it, is really as long as an emerging manager that's graduating to becoming an established manager, as long as they're consistent on fund size, as long as they're not trying to raise a 200 million fund to invest in pre-seed, that is still a manager we will be interested in and will be introducing to other LPs or be backing. But in terms of allocation between emerging managers and more general established bigger managers, we obviously are big proponent of investing so mostly into emerging manager or smaller fund sizes because this is where really the bigger returns will be coming from.
When it comes to allocation, if you think about fund of funds that are specialized in emerging managers, that's one thing. And then again, if you think about typical other LPs, what we see is that most of the LPs, at least in the United States, investing in emerging managers, first funds or second funds, they tend to be high net worth individuals, family offices, small endowments. That's what we see there. And for their portfolios, it does make different sense than it would make for established big investors like pension funds, which do have a very large portfolios, and you really cannot invest that kind of money into these smaller emerging managers that it would have a big impact on the allocation or the returns. But what we have seen lately is that some of these non-typical LPs, which is in this case endowments, bigger endowments, and also even some pension funds, they have started to create an understanding that they should be in this asset class to understand what's going on with the pre-seed and seed, and then again have these so-called side pockets where they make a decision to allocate a certain amount of money during a certain period of time. That is some traction we have seen lately. It perhaps started for about a year ago.
So basically, you are recommending to increase the emerging manager slice in the general allocations due to the bigger returns.
Yes.
Yes.
100%.
Good.
It's return and it's a certain kind of diversification because the markets are not in sync. A lot of you guys have been investing in different types of venture capital funds and even directs. If it's pre-seed, seed, series A, B, C, D, or F, it's a totally different ball game. It's under venture capital umbrella, but we're not talking about same type of investments.
Okay, about co-investing as a strategy with the GPs. We see quite a lot of fund of funds also doing the co-investing. Are you guys doing it, and what's your general opinion on that? Kind of like, do you see that as a good strategy?
I think it's very interesting and important for LPs to have access to those co-investments. These are usually breakout companies from several funds, but I also think it's even more interesting when they are value-add investors or, their legacy businesses are in that specific field or industry, and they can actually benefit and also add value directly to this startup.
Yes, we've seen that co-investment, but the other thing, which was a big surprise to me, that there is a lot of these SPVs there as well. Because the best ones, the best emerging managers investing in pre-seed or seed, they negotiate themselves pro rata rights to invest in following rounds like A's and B's. And sometimes if there are these breakout companies, there could be these SPVs. Normally the structure for the SPVs is like 0-10, which really means that you don't pay any management fee for the SPV, and then there could be a 10% carry on it. And I've seen some examples of certain smaller funds where they have raised a certain amount of money, but actually their LPs have invested more money into these SPVs that has come out from the rights.
Okay, that's pretty interesting to see this kind of even.
This is something that I didn't know that existed like it does, but in the United States it seems to be the case. Most of these emerging managers who are able to do that are very extremely well connected. They could be like founders in the past of unicorns or really good operators, and they have these networks, which really means that they might be able to get the allocation. Sometimes they get allocation even if the fund has not been an investor.
That's typically because, they have been value add, they have been helpful, and those founders want them or want their network or access on the cap table as well alongside them.
Okay, and of course we have here like a bunch of family office, for example, in our audience. How would you say if someone, let's say a family office in this case is a little bit doubtful about their strategy on emerging managers? What's your recommend? Like, who should they talk to refine their strategy, or where they could find more information? And of course, maybe not recommend yourself, perhaps, but you can.
I'm not going to recommend myself, but I just want to share a fun story. So previously in my experience, I was helping a single family office build their venture arm. And this is where I realized that most smaller family offices who are obviously investing across asset classes are really not equipped to be doing venture on their own. And that's because it's a small family office. Their venture, they don't have one employee or one person doing just venture. And so it's an investment team of perhaps one or two resources. And these resources are typically not really equipped with the tools to be doing venture. So this is when I decided to address this, and I started a boutique advisory firm that does VC as a service.
Okay.
And the idea behind it is to be that fractional employee, that fractional resource that just does VC. And the way we do it is that we look across all their assets, the investments across all asset classes, divide them between industries, stages, geographies, and advise them or give them options onto what we think their strategy in venture should be. And most of the time, it's either if let's say it's a big real estate family office, we would ask them, would you prefer to invest, in prop tech fund to get access to those early innovations in the real estate space, or do you want to invest in something else and completely diversify? But obviously, there's today a lot of new tools and new courses that people can take to get more familiar with looking at VC as an asset class.
And especially emerging managers in there. It's part of the whole VC asset class.
Yes, and this and just to say here that maybe we'll touch to this later, but underwriting an emerging manager is extremely difficult and really requires a lot of time. It's a full-time job.
Yes, and I would probably, the first thing that I would do is that if you're from a family office, I would try to find a family office who had already done it, because that's kind of, peer-to-peer.
Yeah.
Because if you go to some other people like consultants or fund of funds or GPs or whatever, they probably recommend you to invest in this asset class. But if you can find, from your networks of family offices and so on, people who've already done it, that might be the most realistic, way of getting that information. What we did in the, I think it was in April or so, we had that in our company, we had an LP Institute program cohort 1, where we, thought that if there are people in our network of LPs or aspiring LPs who actually want to invest in emerging managers, we made that kind of test. We got 800 applicants to the program and took in 50. We were able to took in 50 applicants. They were everything from something that I would call a supporter, which means that it's a person who don't have resources yet to make these investments, but are actually going to make some investments in the asset class. Then there were people who were like high net worth individuals who have resources but don't have the necessary skills to do that. And then again, family offices and even institutional investors, because it's as difficult for a big institution to be there as a small investor if you haven't done it, because it's so completely different from like investing in established venture capital, private equity, infrastructure, private debt. So that's another possibility. And I'm quite sure that there are some other courses you can take if you want to. But get information first and understanding. And after that, make a decision if that is something you want to do, because you don't have to do it.
Okay, let's go into the actual manager selection, which is, of course, the bread and butter of the fund of fun job, right? Fund of fun, someone says, right? The fun part. So, how do you kind of like what kind of excites you about the emerging managers part, excluding the returns, right? And then like a little bit share about your selection process.
I think, that emerging managers, especially those that are getting set up today, are faced with a lot of hurdles. They are, setting up in a very hard economic downturn. There's a lot of illiquidity. So these are, managers that are in it for the long term. They're not in it just to be a venture capitalist like we saw. There was a lot of a VC tourists a few years ago. These are, managers that have a chip on their shoulder. They are going to run through walls to make it happen. And the way we assess this is, first, how when you're looking at a company, you look at product market fit. But when you look at a founder, a GP, you look at GP thesis fit. Why would a founder want them on their cap table? Why would they make space for them? And what can they actually add to it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I have 3 questions. Why are you going to do it? What are you going to do? And when are you going to do it? I think the why question is most important, because you must have a good reason for it. Not just that you read about it somewhere or you think that it's the cool thing to do or sexy thing, because it's very hard work, in particular for first-time funds and first funds, you know, I've said it's like digging a ditch, because you know it's damn hard work, and you know most of these people who get into this line of business, they're hard workers and they are smart, and even if they are that, quite a few of those people who have done it are going to fail. So it's very difficult question to very difficult line of business to be successful. So we need to understand that it's not going to be a walk in the park. And it's about the motivation and understanding that if you raise a fund, you should be there at least for 15 years or 10 to 15 years, regardless of the outcome. So it's a very long-term commitment from our side, from the LP side, to make that kind of decision. I'm mostly looking at the people, what they are and why they are doing it. It's people's business, and it's not that different from when you're selecting companies, you make direct investments. It's all about the founders and the team, and of course the thesis. The thesis has to make sense, but it's very people-centric.
I think it can also be summarized with one question to the manager. Why do you think that we should have another fund in today's environment? You know, when there's such a plethora of funds, why are you still setting one extra fund?
Yes, and are you there? Because there's a lot of vanilla out there. How can you be the chocolate or the strawberry in the big pile of vanilla out there? That's I've been hearing that over the years a lot also.
It's always about plain vanilla, but that is one of the reasons looking at venture as a whole and also emerging managers is that if you are looking for middle of the road no-brainer, that's not a good idea. You have to be able to go a little bit off-piste with them. They should not be afraid of being a little bit different. Sometimes one of the best investments, at least what I've done in the past, on direct companies or even funds, were in the companies that I was very uncertain about. I wasn't sure if I want to make that call, but there was something about it. If you go that middle of the road copycat kind of thing, you won't be able to get the returns that you wish. There should be something that is different. We are looking at deep tech right now, which is quite big in the United States, at least, and it's gaining some traction in Europe as well. And you have to be able to think emerging managers as a frontier capital. There are new people, new kids on the block, maybe. Some of them are not new kids on the block, but they try to make things a bit different. So, you know, I'm looking for that kind of personalities as well.
And of course, if they have access, if you talk about deep tech, do they have access, understanding on the you know, subtopics or whatever they're, you know, focusing on? Okay. How about then on the little bit, you know, red flags? What kind of things trigger big alarm bells? This is not for me. What a manager, I don't know if you want to share about, because then they're gonna, you know, clean away the alarm bells, at least from this room and maybe in the records. But what kind of red flags do you see in the managers? What kind of things really, like, whoa, this is not for me, or I don't want to go in this one?
I think there are two very large red flags. And one of them is when we feel that the emerging manager or the manager is, you know, for him, it's an AUM game. He's just going to raise fund after fund. Like, he hasn't even closed his second fund. He's already thinking about raising fund 3 and how big fund 3 is going to be. So that's obviously a very large red flag. A second thing is, you know, when the portfolio construction model doesn't make sense. You know, so if, you know, when we dig deeper into a specific, or his portfolio construction in terms of, you know, what is the average valuation? What is the average ownership that they're going to get? What is their reserves fall on? And, you know, either it doesn't make sense because, you know, it's not in sync with the market valuations, but also when they are unable to articulate and answer that.
Basically, typically, our process is the due diligence process or searching and sourcing process to the point that we actually make the decision. They tend to take a little bit longer time than many GPs wish. It depends on many things. We obviously have to do that technical due diligence, maybe it takes its time. Then it's about the team, reference checks, thesis fit, and so on. But I would say that a good friend of mine said to me a long time ago when I was new to this that there's one thing you have to keep in your mind. If there is anything at all that bothers you about the deal, walk away, even if you don't know what it is. Because if you have done it many times, like, met maybe thousands of managers and made hundreds of investments, you get that kind of intuition. It's not gut feeling. It's more than like an intuition that there is something wrong about the deal. You don't know yet what it is, but if it does bother you, don't do it. Walk away, because normally what happens is that you kind of know that afterwards. Somebody has said that experience, that she's a hard teacher. She gives you the test first, and the lesson comes later. So you kind of have to practice and meet a lot of managers. That's how it comes. You get that kind of understanding. If there is anything at all that bothers you, just walk away.
I agree. I think it's, the flair that you develop, and then if there's something that you feel, like you said, Marco, that is wrong, then...
Yeah, because we're talking about, 10 years marriage here. You don't want to get married to somebody. You don't maybe enjoy going for a dinner or a drink or something like that.
Yeah, and we tend to meet them several times. And ask the same type of questions, and sometimes you don't get the same answers. So that is something. It's why you have to spend a lot of time with that. We don't do the stuff that the great David Swensen did for Yale Harvard a long time ago when he started to invest in the asset class. He actually went out with every single GP he made an invest in, and he wanted to drink with them. That's what we did.
Okay, that's
to get the right answers.
Yeah. Truth comes. Okay, we're running out of time, but let's do a quick future predictions on the emerging managers vintage 2023, 2024, and next year 2025 vintages. What do you see in the future? What kind of vintages are we working with today?
I think if you look at the previous data, so after the financial crisis, that this was really the time where venture has been, like, right after a crisis. This is exactly when the performance is much higher, because this is when the entrepreneurs are more resilient. There is less liquidity in the market, and obviously valuations go down. So I think 2023, 24, 25 are going to be great vintages.
I do agree. It has happened a couple of times in the past. If you think about vintages from mid-90s to late 90s, they were great. They were the best ever. And then we got the dot-com crisis, very bad vintages. The same happened after GFC, and I think that we are maybe closer to that dot-com crisis, what happened, because, there are similarities in that, and it was money-driven bubble in the late 90s, as it was for a couple of years ago. And I'm convinced that if you are an LP and want to be in this asset class, regardless if you're investing in emerging managers or established managers, if you have the resources, if you have the capital to deploy, I think it's a good idea to invest in venture capital and venture capital funds. This vintage is 23, which is already gone, 24, 25, maybe 26. Because if you miss these vintages, you're not going to be able to make those portfolio returns by coming back like 26 or 27. You got to be there.
All right. So put the money to work. Great vintages coming. Great returns coming. Thank you so much, panelists. They'll be available for maybe questions during the culinary experiences. We don't have time now, but let's give them a big hand, yeah?